A close friend of mine had an affair with my ex-partner without my knowledge. I'd say it's safe to say that he isn't close anymore. We were both part of the same friend group, and the main issue here is that he didn't tell me about it. My ex and I are on good terms, so that didn't cause me much concern. What bothered me was that all our other friends in the group were pressuring him to tell me that he was dating my ex. Not doing so is a bad move. It leads to problems. We're adults in our 30s. Come on, we're all adults here. I even told him before, during one of our drunken rants, that if he ever asked me if he could try for my ex, I'd support him. This made me even more disappointed in him for not telling me. This went on for months, and after countless times of being told by both my ex and my friends that he needed to tell me, he still didn't tell her until one day he just said, "It's been so long, I don't think about it anymore." By that time, he wasn't with my ex anymore and had found someone else. My ex felt like she was being used for her apartment and for him to have a place to stay, which seems like a reasonable assumption, given that he had nowhere to go and kept showing up with laundry and needing a place to sleep. Anyway, she was pretty upset. My closest girlfriend couldn't take it anymore, so she came to me and told me everything. I'm naturally disappointed. I can understand why she'd feel that way, although I know the setup is probably too good to be true. It's like something out of a movie script. There was a party coming up, a gathering of the friend group in question, including a few others from various places. We all meet up at my friend's place to have a few drinks. I act like everything's fine once my friend arrives with his new girlfriend. We started drinking, and everyone was having a great time. Then someone decided to play drinking games. This is when the song comes on. It's basically just beats and stuff, with an occasional voice telling everyone that a drinking game or event is about to start. That's when he says, "Pause the song, play a round of Never Have I Ever," and it just clicked in my brain. This is it. I was planning to talk to him about it at the party before we got too drunk, just to clear the air. But I couldn't pass up this opportunity. As luck would have it, I was the last person to go. It was the ideal opportunity for a bit of payback. The room was in high spirits. After it got really quiet, I have to say that I've never experienced such suspense before. The next thing that was said went something like this. Me. I've never been so foolish as to play games with one of my best friend's exes behind their backs. I turn to my friend and look him in the eye. Just a heads up, his current girlfriend is also aware of this situation and has been pressuring him to come clean for a while, which he felt was unnecessary. I have to give him credit, though. He didn't avoid telling me because he was trying to get away with it. He didn't care about me or anything like that. He avoided telling me because he's not very forthcoming. But again, what did he think was going to happen? That I'd grab the nearest blunt object and beat him to death right then and there? Unfortunately, his lack of courage outweighed his loyalty. Anyway, he gets a nervous look on his face, which he tries to cover up with a fake smile and a smug ooh under his breath. Everyone else is also silent, waiting to see what happens. I noticed this and decided to defuse the situation and make sure there were no hints of violence or anything like that. I look around the room, and everyone's watching me. I decide to make a bigger fool of him. We were all pretty good friends at that party. We were the type of friends who would never backstab each other. We had each other's backs. So, here's what happened. I just asked the question, and there was a lot of suspenseful silence. I look around the room. Me. Is there anyone out there? Is there anyone here who can help me with this? I make eye contact with a few guys. No one? I was right. Then he looks back at him. This also made a couple of them laugh, which was a nice bonus for me. Anyway, I decided to stop it after that because I had made my point. I told him we needed to talk, so we wrapped up the game and I took him outside to chat. I decided to forgive him because I don't want to be petty and angry all the time over minor issues. Anyway, I told him that our friendship wouldn't be the same ever again, and he understood. The night wasn't even over because the craziest revenge he got that night wasn't from me. It was from other events involving the cops, his girlfriend, medical personnel, and so on. But that's a story for another time. I was a shy kid in high school. Back then, I was what you'd expect from an introvert, depressed and wearing oversized clothes like sweaters, jogging pants, or shoes. I was also overweight and had trouble keeping up with my sleep schedule because of the amount of homework I got during the day and the fact that my mother harassed me nearly every day when I got home. Just to give you some background, this was before I started fighting to live my own life by my own set of rules, not by those written by people who are far weaker-minded than those who came up with them. For over 10 years, she tried to break me by forcing me to take homeschool classes, physically and mentally abusing me, and even going so far as to trash the living room, then forcing me and my brother to clean it up. By the time I turned 17, I joined the Army, hoping that if I graduated, I would still be able to redeem myself to her, despite never doing anything wrong. I was always hit with the "I raised you better than that," or "I'm your mother, therefore I know everything about you," despite never teaching me anything meaningful. I dropped out due to medical reasons. For the entire 2020 to 2021 period, I was scared that I would never be good enough to show my mother respect. I even went so far as to bash my head against the wall in my bedroom for half an hour before my mother confronted me and assured me that she was at fault. She never showed any willingness to accept her faults and still thinks I'm as introverted as I was in high school. When I left the Army, I had a new view of the world. I saw people who were supportive and those who were rough around the edges. They told me that to get things done, I had to take action, not just talk. They also said that if I wanted to live my life, I had to make choices. From that point on, I was motivated to lose weight, to wear clothes that fit me, and to train almost every night to shed some extra weight. I also started taking cold showers daily, regardless of the weather or season. I lost 66 pounds in 5 months. Fast forward to late August 2022. I got back from my weekly chores and saw that one of the water jugs was empty. I told my brother, who was a bit spoiled at the time, that if he emptied a jug, he had to do it an hour before I took all the jugs out to get them refilled. I ended up arguing with her about how she wasn't disciplining my brother because she only resorted to words, not actions, to tell him to learn. Things got pretty intense. She started throwing the water machine to the floor, destroying it, smashing it, and eventually trashed the living room over and over. After enduring her nonsense for over a decade, I finally lost my cool and threw a punch at her lower neck area, near her chest. Even though I wasn't using my full strength, I still sent her tumbling down the hallway of our little mobile home. At that point, I decided it was time to draw the line and make it clear that she wasn't going to cross my boundaries again. I spent the next 10 minutes telling her how she wasn't taking responsibility for her actions, how she wasn't a good role model for her kids, and how she always talked trash about them. Instead of accepting that she'd been sucker punched by her own son and given a lecture without any buffer between us, she threatened to call the cops on me. I stood my ground at my door and shoved her away several times when she tried to trash my room. I called my dad to break the tie. It was November 2022, and I don't regret a thing. I confronted the person who was the root of all my depression, my suffering, and treating my life like her own extension. I punched her, then went on with living my life, with now my own purpose, to never live for anyone, but to live for myself. I still live with my dad in a rental room of a house, with a part-time job on the weekends, and I'm going to community college. I was doing pretty well, now that I'm not bound by my mother. Sorry if this was too long. I don't usually talk unless I have a reason to, but I finally got my revenge after over a decade. The lesson here is that you shouldn't let people with titles drag you down, even those within your own organization. People who get titles like mother or father have to prove to their kids that they're worthy of the title. If they can't live up to it, their child will end up being a terrible person or even living a life without knowing who their parents are. I'm 20 now. I was the guy who went to a party, had a few too many drinks, and ended up waking up with a huge pile of vomit on my chest. I'd like to tell you what happened from my perspective. I remember getting a call from my then-girlfriend, who I thought at the time I was in an exclusive, monogamous relationship with. She was clearly upset and said she needed to come over and talk to me, and that it was important. When she arrived, I could tell she had been crying, so I asked her what had happened. She then told me the full story. She said she had been in a committed long-term relationship when we met, and that her partner found out about me, which ended things between them. She said he was upset when he broke up with her and worried that he might retaliate against me. So she decided to come clean and tell me the full truth. Needless to say, I was taken aback and speechless about the entire situation. I had no idea about any of this and thought we were in a loving, exclusive relationship. She asked me to try to put everything behind us and start over, but I refused and ended things with her right then. Needless to say, I was upset, but not just because she cheated on me. I was also annoyed because it seemed like I was being used as the other man. After all, our relationship was only 6 months old, while her other relationship had lasted over a year. I was upset with her for lying to me and cheating on me. I was also jealous of the other guy because at first, I only saw it from my perspective as if he was taking her away from me. As time went on, though, I started to realize that I was the one who broke up a longer and more established relationship, and my feelings toward the other guy became mixed. I was still angry with him, but I also felt sorry for him because his relationship ended. The mixed feelings of anger and pity really threw me for a loop for a while. I decided to go to a house party with one of my good friends to try to clear my head. I ended up drinking too much because I was in a bad place mentally, and one of my colleagues who was throwing the party led me up to one of his rooms and let me sleep things off. As you probably know, there was a lot more to it than that. What you might not realize is how confused, afraid, and utterly bewildered I was about who, when, and why this could have happened. I asked my colleagues about it, thinking it was a practical joke that had gone too far. We've all heard stories about how the first guy to pass out at a party gets dicks and things like insert here written on his face as a practical joke. This was definitely crossing a line, though. They all swore on their families that they had nothing to do with what happened. They told me they were upset about what had happened to me and wanted answers. They seemed genuinely upset and convinced me they were telling the truth. Who would have thought, years later, that I would be randomly listening to Reddit stories on YouTube and finally find the answer to so many frustrating questions that have been on my mind for years? I have to tell you, I ended up going to therapy because of these issues. I also had to stop drinking alcohol because I developed a fear of sleeping in unfamiliar places or falling asleep around people I didn't trust. I subconsciously realized that if someone could take a dump on me while I was passed out, they could just as easily cut my throat, and there'd be nothing I could do about it. It really screwed me up for years, but at least I have some level of closure now. Life really is stranger than fiction sometimes. I was born and raised in the U.S. and spent 5 years studying there, but I had to leave the country due to unforeseen circumstances. I relocated to Sinaloa with my mother, where I have been residing ever since. I started first grade in high school last July, so I'm still technically a freshman. I'd say I'm this serious but friendly type of student. I get along with everyone in my homeroom. In high school, I have a lot of acquaintances and family friends, so I often end up being the errand boy or just the go-to guy. If they need help, I was helping my English teacher tape things to the walls when a friend approached me with this girl I was really drawn to. We'll call her Backer. I know, weird name. It's just that she usually gives her friends bread-related nicknames, and well, I kind of took inspiration from that, lol. We hit it off as friends. A month and a half later, I noticed that she was getting pretty close to me. I played it off as friendliness, since I'm not the brightest. Then he came along. For privacy, I'll call him Ricardo. Ricardo is your typical class clown, but he seems like a decent guy. He and Backer hit it off right away, and they seemed like they were going to be a great couple. I didn't want to get in the way of that, because I had a feeling she liked him back. Well, I was wrong. It turned out that they were going to give themselves a chance, but she regretted it after he saw him flirting with another girl from her class. She just stopped being affectionate towards him, and I and her became even closer. One day, we went to the library to read since I love books and she does too. It was just the two of us, but Ricardo decided it was a good time to butt in and hang out with us the whole afternoon. While he was there, he made a move on Backer, even going as far as to place a hand on her thigh and squeeze it without her consent. By this point, I was getting concerned, so I stood up, took Backer's hand, and left with her. On the way out, I asked her what was going on. She told me that he had been harassing her for about 5 days. I said that I had thought they were going steady, but she denied this and told me that she liked me more than him. Then we both took a moment to reflect, and that's when I got a girlfriend. Fast forward again, about 5 days before the Christmas break here in Mexico. On the day before the break, we're allowed to come to school in casual clothes and do whatever we want, as long as it's not illegal. So I and Backer decided to head to a park and just spend our free time there. But during our time in her home, we were in a room and people were staring at us, so she asked them about it. It turned out that Ricardo had spread a rumor that he was dating Backer and that I was harassing her. I'm a patient student, but this was the last straw. He'd harass my girlfriend, talk crap behind my back, and he'd also try to turn my friends against me. So I excused myself and went straight to Ricardo's classroom. When I got there, I punched him in the stomach. I didn't know he had a bladder problem. So when I punched him, I saw him fall over, and then his pants started to soak up. I just walked away, feeling pretty weirded out. In short, the guy talked crap, got hit, and then peed his pants. If there's anything as satisfying as getting revenge, it's humbling your bullies. If this story is anything to go by, it's 2022. I was in 8th grade and 14 years old, and my bully, Jeremiah, was in 7th grade and 12 at the time. We were both in the same classroom because the whole class had been mixed up and put together incorrectly. That's pretty unusual, isn't it? Well, Jeremiah was one of those types of people. He'd pick on a kid named Jeremiah who behaved differently than the other students. One day, Jeremiah did something so mean to him that he actually made him cry. Then he started picking on me for a while. One day, though, I had to draw the line. It was November 16th. As usual, he managed to get himself noticed for all the wrong reasons. He came right up to me like he was trying to flirt. As you probably guessed, I wasn't too pleased about it. I told him at least 3 times to get out of my face. But he wasn't having it. I gave him a warning by lifting my desk from one side. I didn't lift it too far up, but that didn't stop him. At that point, I tried to get the teacher's attention to ask her to intervene. But she didn't do anything and looked at me like I was crazy. A few moments later, he said, "I'll take those glasses off your face and break them." I responded with a bit of a scolding, mentioning that his glasses came from Dollar Tree. Then, a few moments later, the teacher finally told him to stand up and move. So he did, and then he decided to twerk in my face and try to touch me like I was his girlfriend. But he was too slow to react, as I was already engaged in self-defense. I then tapped his hands away, stood up, and my friend, Jeremiah, who also goes by the name of Jeremiah, got up and went to a corner of the room. He was aware that something was about to happen, but he tried to avoid getting involved. But in that moment, I lost my cool. I then started striking Jeremiah with punches. And what made it even better was that Jeremiah didn't retaliate. All he did was try to pick me up like that was the best thing to do. The whole class was pretty wild for a bit. The admin had to step in and break up the fight, so we both stopped. I'm sure you all know who came out on top in the battle. If you set me, go ahead and get yourself a butterscotch cookie. Anyway, we were both suspended for 1 day. As for me, I couldn't care less. I also helped out some students who were bullied by Jeremiah. Since we returned the day after our suspension, Jeremiah has been silent, as one might expect, at least for a while. In May of next year, he got into another fight. This time it was him against a guy named Edward. He was in the same grade as him. You'd think he'd make the mistake of picking on someone in a higher grade and bigger than him. That's what only idiots do, right? As it turns out, I might have been wrong because he only failed one of those things, which was picking on someone in a higher grade than you. If you were wondering, he still hadn't grasped the concept that size matters in a fight. I think you know who came out on top here. I'm sure it's all becoming clear by now. As you may recall, Jeremiah and I were suspended for a day back in November. This time, he got a 5-day suspension, which I thought was pretty fitting. Wow, this guy is a real piece of work, isn't he? Fast forward to today, and it turns out he actually goes to the same high school as me. He's obviously a freshman since this is my sophomore year, and this is the first time in a long time I've seen him. So far, though, there's been no trouble. Sorry for the long story, but do you remember Yu-Gi-Oh? It's a card game. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, no worries. When I was younger, I was really into the game. I was so into the game that I would go out of my way to make money to get cards and packs. Let's move on to a few years later. Our card shops are holding a tournament where the winners will get a chance to join the pro leagues of the game. You had to win that tournament and then go on to win 3 other tournaments. If you won all 5, you would get a place in the pro tournament. This was pretty unusual for a small town. I put together the best deck I could, and I also gathered half of what I called my remove from play deck back before Synchro. I thought I'd test it out. I played in a tournament with Dennis and ended up beating him in the final. He wasn't upset, and when he found out I was looking for a card he offered to trade, but we had to go to his place to get them. I was so excited to finish up my deck that I didn't pay attention and let him take my card. At the time, I was unaware. The next week at the card shop, his brother was outside bragging and saying how stupid I was and how he swiped them in front of me. I was pretty upset about it. I went into the shop, ready to confront him, but stopped myself. I was on his level physically, and I wasn't interested in fighting. Then I remembered the tournament. I wasn't planning to enter now that my deck was gone, and I had no proof. But Dennis was, and he was running an ODK, one-turn knockout deck. I quickly gathered as many cards as I could, avoiding any trades with Dennis or his friends. I was a few cards short, and this guy came in to sell his cards. I don't know who he was. He had the cards I needed, and in an act I couldn't believe, he gave me his cards because he was quitting the game. Now that I had my deck, I gathered every cent I had and entered the tournament without Dennis. I won a few matches pretty quickly and ended up making it to the next round. I made it to the next tournament, which was local, and saw Dennis. He'd won another game in another store, showing off his new remove from play deck. We're placed into our brackets, which are based on opposite teams. Unfortunately, this means I'm missing out on the chance to get revenge. I was wrong. My prototype deck was doing well, and my flesh out was clearing people out fast. I gave myself a pat on the back. When I got to the finals, Dennis saw me and smiled. I wasn't expecting that. It was the first of 3 matches. I knocked him out in 5 turns, which wasn't ideal for him. In the second round, he goes first, and I get a bad hand, but I don't make it easy on myself and try my hardest to not give away too much. It was the final match. Time to show what I've got. So, my deck removes the card from play and returns it to my deck while leaving my opponent without 25 cards within a single turn. At the time, Necroface, a card that removes 5 cards from each play deck when removed from play, wasn't limited to 2. I still believe it was my fault, but it was after this. I'll tell you, it was pretty satisfying watching this 15-year-old kid take on a 30-something guy for an hour. Ultimately, I finished him off with his deck, his hand, and his life points all depleted. Afterwards, he extended his hand to shake, and I stood up, grabbed my cards, and told him, loud enough for the officials to stop me. I don't play dirty with thieves. I felt pretty good about it, actually. As a bonus, after I told the official what had happened, they added him to the tournament ban list, so he couldn't enter any more tournaments. On another note, I came in 16th place in the Pro League with my deck, which was basically an ODK burn deck. I still see Dennis from time to time. He was kicked out of all the local card shops for theft, which is pretty strange. When I was around 12 or 13, I was bullied at school for being a bit chubby. It was a medical condition, high insulin resistance, basically type 2 diabetes, but the bullies didn't know that. I tried to ignore it, but my parents found out and told my teacher. Her disciplinary approach wasn't effective, so the behavior continued. I came up with a plan and asked my parents to try getting ghost pepper cheese. I just pretended I liked it and asked for it in a sandwich, but I also asked for a ham and cheese sandwich. My friend had a good friendship with my bully, but he didn't like it after what had happened and how he acted. I labeled the ghost pepper cheese sandwich with his name, Alfie HS. He always sat at the table I would with his friends and acted like best friends with my friend just to annoy me. My friend gave him the sandwich, and I just acted like I wasn't paying attention and that it was normal cheese. He took a bite and started to tear up, as if it were the end of the world, asking what it was. I just said, "Oh, it looks like friend's name mother must have used the ghost pepper cheese by accident. Just have some cold water. It'll help." As you can probably guess, it made things worse since it was the hottest pepper in the world. My friend and I started laughing while he was just red-faced and trying to curse me out, knowing it was actually me. My parents even found it funny when they heard about it. It's been 4 years now, and we're still in the same school, but he's made a point of staying away from me. He's not in any clubs, and I'm in a rugby club, even though I'm hypermobile and knock-kneed, which means my legs would hurt a lot after a while. Whenever he sees me playing rugby, he just stares at me, shocked, since he was rejected when he tried to join the rugby team. My cousin, who has a South African father and British mother, eventually came to join our school. He was the fittest in the school and has always done rugby. He was able to join the club with me. After I finished a rugby match, my bully started to bully me again. We train against the other 2 clubs in the school, the female rugby club and the male rugby club. I was in the regular club, which accepts anyone, regardless of gender or pronouns. My cousin was in the male club, and he helped us win. He used tactics, athleticism, and experience to help the team. He saw that my former bully was trying to start something and was aware of what had happened in the past, since I had told him about it. I always carry a pocket knife for protection. My school allowed certain people, including many girls, to carry them due to harassment, etc. He wasn't aware of this. My cousin is a black belt in martial arts. We came up with a code where if I do something, we do a certain thing. I'm quick on my feet, so I pulled him into the hallway since everyone else had already gone into the changing room. I then took my pocket knife out and waved it around, cutting the buttons on his blazer. I quickly stepped out of the way as my cousin took control of the situation and fought him. People heard and came running, and the teachers broke it up and asked us to explain. We simply informed them that he was bullying me due to a medical condition and that my cousin was merely defending me. My bully got suspended, and my cousin got a postcard as a punishment. It was for 6 achievement points, which you get for being good. If you get the most at the end of the year, you get a prize as well as a badge for that specific topic. He got determination and teamwork, while I got teamwork, since we also explained we worked together since I dragged him into the fight. Double revenge.